We all look so young in our profile pictures. I'm sure those are all a few years old, right?
How working ages us.
Indeed, indeed. Startups. I'd never had gray hairs before startups.
You don't have a family yet, or because you will get
more? I do. I got to. Yeah, I started Liftango when my wife was pregnant with her first child. So yeah, I don't know where the grays came from. Silly thing to do on hindsight, but anyway, we're here now.
Yeah. So people have started to come in. We have 75 attendees joining us now. So I'm just going to let it coming in for a few more seconds, and we can start. Okay, thank you so much everyone for tuning in to MoveAsia's This Week webinar on MAS for Public Transit. I am Eileen Meleng, the producer of this event. My team and I are very happy to welcome everyone to this webinar this week. And joining us here today are Aymeric Weyland from Mobility Makers, Hans Arby from Ubigo, Chris Liang from Shenzhen Bus Group, and Kevin Orr from Liftango. So thank you everyone for joining us and sharing your insight today. So just one housekeeping matter, there's a Q&A button on everyone's screen where you can leave your question for the panelists, and they will get on to answering your question towards the end of this session. And we have also received quite a number of questions from the registration, and we will try our best to address all of them, but in the case that we don't, feel free to get connected to our speakers over LinkedIn, and do follow MoveAsia LinkedIn page for more updates. So now I would like to pass over this session to Aymeric. Aymeric, over to you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Eileen. Thanks for the invitation. Hello, everybody. So first of all, I want to present myself. I'm Aymeric Weyland. I am French, and I am working in mobility for more than 10 years. Today, we have a great topic, is how to integrate public transit, mass transit, with mass mobility as a service. We have a big rock star from this industry today, and I think we should start with a round table with everyone, Chris, Hans, and Kevin, saying a bit of your background, a bit about your company, and what is for you the definition of mobility as a service. So Chris, maybe you can start.
Right. Good day, everyone. My name is Chris Liang from Shenzhen Bus Group, International Development Department. And my company based in Shenzhen, China, has about 12,000 buses and usually carries about 2 million passengers a day. But with this whole mist of the COVID-19, we are down to about 50% of that. But still, we think that is a good number considering the whole environment and the measures that we are taking. And for us, we operate buses, taxis, and other services, including MaaS. So MaaS to us is mostly a value-added services that we can provide to passengers with a more customizability, and also the price range is right in between the bus and the taxi. So they can get a more premier services without having to pay too much.
Thanks. Hans, you continue?
Yeah, so my name is Hans Arby. I'm founder and CEO of Ubigo, one of the few commercial MaaS operators. So we launched first in Stockholm last year. We offer a subscription-based service that includes public transport, car sharing, taxi, rental car, bike rent. And MOS for us, it's definitely something much more than just an app. So we see it as a one-stop shop where you have one contractual partner that promise to take care of the mobility needs of a household. And it's about both technical and commercial integration. So you get a real seamless experience in the app, but also the service in itself. So it really feels like one service, even though it's combined of different modes. It's also very local, which is a challenge because it's even though MOS might be a global market, but every business will be local, and you have to work closely with the public transport and other public actors. So it's going to be in a way unique, but the challenge is to kind of replicate as much as possible, but at the same time be local.
Thanks. Maybe Kevin, you can finish this front table.
Great. Hi, everybody. Hope you're all well. My name's Kevin Orr, founder, CEO of Liftango. So we're an on-demand bus technology that kind of fills the gap between the bus operators like Chris at Shenzhen Bus Group and the mobility as a service platform providers, which is sort of Hans' expertise. I'm just going to very quickly share a screen that describes where we fit in the world of MaaS. Hopefully you can all see that. So Liftango specifically, we're sort of in this middle group here, providing dynamic shuttle services and on-demand bus technology. So less cars, more shuttles and buses. Visualizing.
Please, can you put on full screen because we don't see all your screen. Thanks.
Hopefully that's a little bit better. So yeah, just to double back, this is where Liftango sort of plays. Over here we've got the multimodal MaaS solution. So you're covering everything from microtransit scooters to public buses. So we feed into these operators, and then we're a digital layer for the bus operators. And this is a great little example of the market growth that was and is expected in the next sort of 5, 10 years. As a company, Liftango, we're based in Sydney, Australia. We've got operations across North America and Europe as well. We started out like 4 years ago with a carpool platform and quickly evolved into providing on-demand bus technology about 3 years ago in the public transport setting in Sydney. Some very innovative trials there. And have obviously evolved our tech to help other transit agencies and bus operators around the world.
Great, thank you. So to get started, I think the first question we will have is how the pandemic changed the way you operate. So the first would be to start with Chris, because you operate a massive fleet of bus, and after to have the answer of Ubigo and Liftango, how do you respond to that, and how can you help Chris?
Okay. In terms of operating a public transportation in the COVID-19 environment, so Shenzhen actually discovered its first case in January the 19th, I think. So on the 20th, Shenzhen Bus Group formed a emergency work group to address this issue, and throughout the whole time, this work group they're meeting weekly to develop new measures when they're looking at the new development of the COVID-19. And some of them, the very useful measures that we are taking is that, first of all, we are keeping the passenger load on all our buses below 50%, and also by that we are able to keep a larger time gap between two dispatches of the buses, and that will allow us to keep some reserve bus. So when we see a specific bus route is approaching the 50% passenger load limit, and we can dispatch additional bus to pick up the passengers. And after looking at the whole service, how we can optimize it in accordance to the COVID-19 development, we started developing these very strict cleaning and sanitizing standards, which we are intended to keep even after the pandemic's over. And as a citywide effort, we are keeping QR code tracking on passengers. So back a few years back, mobile payment with the QR code became a very popular thing in China. So a lot of the citizens, passengers, they are very adapted to say if they see a QR code, the first response to them is to scan it and see what's going on. So we kind of use it to our advantage that people would do such a thing and fill out this information voluntarily. And we now have a better idea of where these passengers have been to, where they're going. And as a citywide effort, we are keeping track of where everybody is and where they were earlier. And
Chris, if you don't have a smartphone, you cannot take the bus?
Sorry?
If you don't have the QR code, you cannot enter in the bus?
I mean, without the QR code, there are still solutions for passengers to fill out this information. And some of the earlier method that we had taken before the QR code is that we would have them fill out some information either by pen and paper, or some of the buses are equipped with the video recording equipment so that they can state these information. We can keep a log of these, and later on we'll pass it to the municipal government, where they collect this information and do analysis. And if some of them were to get infected by the virus, we can notify them, and the municipal government can notify us and to notify the other passengers on board and tell them that you should be more careful, or maybe you should get tested to see if you are positive with COVID-19. And some of our buses are also tasked to do emergency response services, where we would pick up passengers who are traveling aboard and came back. So one of the cases is the Costa Venezia, which is a cruise ship, and it just ported in Shenzhen in early February, and we tasked about, I think, 40 buses to pick up all the passengers to their designated quarantine areas where they are quarantined and tested for COVID-19. And as this COVID-19 situation developed, we kind of see it as a new normal now. And so we are trying to protect both the passengers and our drivers. So on both buses and on our taxis, we have installed these transparent plastic shield between the driver's cabin and the rest of the vehicle, so that there is a loose isolation between two parties, and they can still communicate, of course, but the method of transmission of the virus is largely eliminated by just putting the shield up. So in terms of how the pandemic has changed the way we operate, obviously we are operating a lot more carefully in terms of how we're controlling the passenger load, how we are monitoring our vehicle. And but I think these also opens up a lot of new opportunities for us, say in terms of our online training resources. We are looking at more medias to communicate with our passengers. So it's, as some would say, there's always a silver lining. So I guess making us realize how we can change our operation into a better direction is the silver lining of this COVID-19.
Thanks, Chris. And how has the pandemic changed the way you operate?
So we have, yeah. So looking in Sweden, we don't have the total lockdown. It's more kind of a more personal responsibility, but for sure, it's really changed. We can see that the decline in public transport ridership is decreased by 75%. little bit more among our customers than the regular, but we have more people that actually can work from home and live closer to the inner city. We see that car sharing is actually more bookings, but they are shorter. So it's people taking care of the short errands, while rental car is much, much lower and taxi almost non-existent. So that's what we see. I mean, we still have small numbers. We, of course, don't do any marketing right now because it's feel kind of strange trying to sell shared mobility and shared vehicles. But we offer for the subscriptions. Our model means that you can, what you haven't used, you can save to the next month. So it's not that people are getting stuck with monthly passes and so on, but we offer them to pause their subscription and so on, so they don't have any build up in their accounts. The car sharing operator, well, we add on disinfectant and so on board to make it safer. But it's really also with the service provider we are working with rental car and car sharing and public transport, the different measures they are taking.
Thanks. Kevin?
Great, thanks, Hans. So yeah, how's the pandemic changed the way Liftango operates? If you'd asked me 2 months ago or 6 weeks ago, we obviously went very quiet. We work in an awful lot of, and all of us work in shared transport here. So it's pretty obvious we've all gone pretty quiet. We didn't know where the industry, where the world was going at that point. Many places, especially in Australia, New Zealand, China, I think we thought it was going to get a little worse. We've been fairly luckily, touch wood, that it's not been as bad. So the last few weeks we've been getting more and more interest, I guess, in it seems to me that there's an acceleration of on-demand bus technology being introduced into public transport for the various reasons, such as there's a way to reduce costs. I think with running at this time fixed route buses that are mostly empty, I think there's a way to look at reducing costs. There's obviously reduced passengers, so you can be a little bit more measured with and appropriate with the vehicles and the assets that you're providing there too. And I think as well with the convenience and the social distancing that the service provides. Instead of waiting at a bus stop, you're getting picked up at your house, for example. You've got a digital layer there that you can actually use contact tracing for, and also choosing your seat on the bus is a feature that we've built that allows you to ensure that you're a couple meters away instead of getting on a busy bus, which isn't quite what's happening now, but is definitely something that was probably going to be more prevalent going into the recovery. So I think what we were seeing before COVID was a digitalization of the bus industry in certain regard for optimization and improvements. I think this is going to accelerate that personally. And what we've seen is where they can move to on-demand buses because they've got technology to do it, or they're using dial-a rides, they are doing it to provide a service. And I think everyone in our industry right now is seeing that there's a certain resilience that a mixed fleet of on-demand and fixed route provides to adapt quite quickly to, I guess, reduce patronage, increase patronage, and pandemics, be it wave 1, wave 2, or the next pandemic. So I think that's heartening from where I was 2 months ago. I think as well, we work a lot in the corporate setting as well. I think there's a lot of distrust currently from corporates to promote public transport and those kind of shared services that MAS promotes. And I think there's going to be an awful lot of trust that we all have to earn back over the next year, 18 months. And I think technology is going to be a way to do it. I think new out-the-box thinking is something that we're going to see more and more of. So a little more heartened today than I was 2 months ago is where I'm at.
Okay, and I was wondering, Chris, do you say you operate bus, taxi, but you have your own mass system, or do you work with a mass provider?
We work with a mass provider called DD, and but we didn't really procure their services or software. Instead, we are creating a joint venture called the DD Yodian, which are running the majority of our bus mobility as a system products. So the products, we have two types of different products now. One is called the Yodian bus. So what this does is that it only runs in the peak hours, in the morning and in the evening. And these are reserved buses, so passengers can purchase tickets online, reserve their seat, and these services only run from their home to the office area. So it's a direct service. Instead of like a regular bus, you have 15, 20 stops before you reach your destination. And the second services on the buses that we offer is that what we call the U Plus bus. So this is more embracing the concept of a carpool. So now we have, say, I guess a bus pool. So people can hail a bus or a minivan, depending on their party size, on the mobile app. So within minutes, a bus would go there and pick them up, drop them off at different locations. And usually on the same bus, we are picking up more than one group of passengers. So we are relying heavily on the application and the server provided by DD to do the calculation of the routes, and so that it's a more efficient services. And we also have, in terms of taxi operation, we have another service provider called 麦士出行. So for now, they're working together on two topics. One is the school taxi. One is what we call the cargo services. So pretty straightforward. School taxis is a service offered to school children and their parents, where they can pay for the ride services from their home to school on a daily, monthly, or weekly basis. And for cargo services, we are combining our services with the cargo delivery system. We are also working on this project with Shenzhen, which is the logistic giant in China, I guess. What it does is that it uses the load time on the taxi's operation and have taxis pick up cargoes from different clients, if they're individual or company. And in the process, this taxi is still available to pick up passengers for street hailing. So what it does is that we are kind of creating the services to with no cost, and also speed up the logistic process of a lot of the companies. So so then it would come to how we are choosing these mass providers. Is I guess it all comes down to what type of service that they usually offer, and what type of service that we can work together and develop furthermore. With these two criteria fit, we would think that this would be the most, I say, suitable mass provider that we would choose.
Would Chris, what would you also be willing and interested being part of an even more aggregated service that you yourself would be one mobility service provider in a more bundled way?
Yes, we are looking at the solution right now. But I think to us, in order to create a bundled service, we need to have a lot of different services provided already before we can combine them into a package and deliver it to our customers. So I get in the future, definitely yes. We are looking at the solution of entering the aggregated service provider, but in the short term, I guess we're still focusing on this very, very detailed service that we are providing to our passengers or clients.
Okay. the big thing, I saw that there are questions coming in from the audience. I will try to pick them up in the seminar, in the webinar. Hans and Kevin, for the last 4 or 5 years, I've got a lot of ride sharings app, a lot of scooters, a lot of moped, a lot of bike. I have my mass transit application, and on my phone, I have like around 10 or 15 applications. I have registered my payment for each application. So it's also one of the questions of the audience is how guys you can bring all this together, and how do you cooperate? Do you have to cooperate with someone like Chris in the mass transport, or tell us more about this big challenge?
Yeah, so I mean, it's okay for you that are really interested in mobility to have a lot of apps on your phone, but regular, and it's okay also when you're going like abroad, you want to shop and try to find the cheapest hotel, airline, and so on. But for the everyday travel, I mean, you seldom woke up on Monday morning and say, wow, this is exciting. I wonder how I'm going to get to work this day. You want to find things that works, and it need to be an easier way. So the value, it's always about convenience, make it easier. And especially if you want to compete with car ownership, because owning your car and using your car, even though it's expensive, you're trapped in congestion and a lot of high cost, you always know how to use your own car. That's kind of a one solution fits all. So we need to, if we want to compete with car ownership, we really need to be integrated and feels like one service with one responsible supplier. But it's actually, and if you want to take care of households' all mobility needs, there are actually 2 aspects. One is the content of the service. What is the different services need to be there so you can handle everything from morning to evening? And then it's public transport. So definitely you need public transport to take care of most of the trips, the cost-effective solution. So you can reach most of your destination with public transport or walking and biking. And then you need cars for all the errands during the week. You need a rental car for weekend trips and so on, and taxi, e-scooter and so on for all the ad hocs. So that's kind of the services you need to be relevant for a household's complete need of mobility. But then it's how you integrate the service, and that is one thing is the app, so you get a seamless experience. So it's really going to feel like one service. And sometimes you talk about MoveAsia as a marketplace, but a marketplace doesn't mean that it's easy to use. That's just collecting a lot of different options in one platform, and that doesn't really help you. That's what you already have on your phone. So it's need to be integrated payment and everything. And we also need to change kind of the price models. So because every service is very different. You don't really know how much it's going to cost and how you should book and how much you should pay. So we trying to bring that together in a subscription, so you kind of have control of your cost. Logical units, we're working with the public transport authority in Stockholm, so we can offer subscription of days in public transport that you can share among your household. What you haven't used 1 month, you can keep to the next month and so on. So finding those price models and the bundling kind of methodology that is relevant for a household as well.
Yeah, this is a question we have. Is people ask is exactly what you are saying, Hans, Chris, Liang, Kevin. How do you manage payments? So when you offer your solution and you plug it with another solution, do you do one ticket, one payment, or more payments?
In our buses, we have both, actually. We have one ticket solution, and we also have a charge by distance solution on the buses. But we are, I think we are pushing to the direction where we would eventually have only one ticket solution by trimming down our services to make it more effective. And for now, our average route length is about 27 kilometers, with the longest one for a one-way trip is 40 kilometers. That's our longest. So when we are running all electric buses, this is, I guess, not the most efficient way to go with. So if we were to trim the services down, keep them under about 20 kilometers or even 15 kilometers, then overall one-ticket solution would be a viable ticketing solution for the passengers and for us.
If I could jump in there, just on your last question, Mark, I think the future will be a few mobility as a service apps, just to give you some comfort there. I don't think it's going to be, you know, a specific scooter app and whatever. It's all going to slowly move towards being a number of mobility as a service apps. And then service providers like ourselves, the scooter applications will just integrate seamlessly. So you won't even know that we're part of it. So it will get better. It's just going to take time. And I think this is still a very, very new space, but have hope, mate. On the ticketing side, it's difficult. A lot, you know, take public transport in itself, and they're only, and in a lot of cases, recently moving over to one form of unified ticketing. And in a lot of cases, they're quite lengthy contracts, quite large contracts, and quite hard to open up to service providers in some cases. So we do have a lot of issues with that. There's also the question around equitable provision. So in a lot of cases, people don't have these cards. They don't have credit cards in a lot of areas in the world. So you need to also be able to take cash, which is the bane of our existence. I think every one of us is having to have cash on a vehicle. It shouldn't be the way we end up, but it's definitely a reality for now. I think that what we're seeing is that everything's moving towards more credit cards, online payments like WeChat, and those types of services. So there is a bit of a unification already happening, which is great for us as developers. We don't have to play around with so many different, I guess, options. But at the minute, you have to have multiple payment platforms to cater for the vast majority of the society.
I think also it's important to say that there are different MOS types of MOS. I think you see in the definition of different levels of integration, where we may be more on the top-down concept, where we create the bundling and find the best suppliers of a service. I mean, one is where you have more like the open marketplace, and you do search and book and payment as an ad hoc single trip, which is one type of MOS, and the subscription base is another one. Because we're trying to, sometimes when you want to integrate things, the best way is to integrate as little as possible. If you have a leaking roof, you can try to mend it, or you can build a new roof on top. So we're trying to, instead of trying to integrate the existing tickets into one ticket, you can actually find new price model and have like a ticket solution that is floating on top of that one. So when we integrate public transport, we want to integrate public transport rather than integrating tickets. So we want to build it on different agreements and different price models, so it makes sense for the customer. So it's viewed as one service as much as possible, and not just putting together different, very discrete and different types of services.
So
I don't know if you understood that.
Yeah. Guys, for you, seamless mobility, like with only one ticket, one payment, do you think is in the next 6 months, next year, or next 2 years? Like, just give me one figures.
No, I mean, the mobility market is really conservative and very silo-based, and different and old system, different old price models, and many mobility service providers tend to rather stick with what they have than dare to open up and start really bundling together with other suppliers. So it's a very conservative, even though you have a lot of new tech and new possibilities, But looking from the business standpoints, car sharing, rental car, they are really traditional, sticking to what they are doing. So that actually, it's hard to recruit customer, but it is as hard to recruit mobility service providers to want to be part of a new service where they are supplying one thing, and start sharing customer together. That's a hard one.
I might jump in and bundle it in with a question from Damien Brown, Aymeric, that's all right. So he's asked, do you believe that the best adopted mass integration apps will be 1, city-owned, 2, mobility provider-owned, 3, venture-owned, like a City Mapper or Google Maps? I think the jury's still out on that. I think that the way it's going to go will be a decision, a crowdsourced decision. If we leave it open to that, so everyone will choose which providers are the best, and there'll be 3, 4, 5, or it might be more localized as well. And so you'll have this, I guess, seamless integration that's controlled by these 3, 4, 5 apps that you might have on your phone, or you just have one. There are different theologies out there. I read something really interesting a while back around the fact that we're moving towards an electric world. There's going to be less ability to tax for road usage, that maybe mobility as a service will be leveraged as a way to tax for road usage. I thought it was really interesting. And that's something, I guess, that you would look at and go, well, that maybe fits into more of a city-owned, or at least a city-contracted type solution, not necessarily a city, a state potentially as well. So there's some really good, I guess, opportunities there for where the world goes. I don't claim to know where it goes, but it's a very interesting world that we're going to walk into. But I think I'd like to see a world where the user at least has some say in the choice of the app that they get to choose based on user experience and convenience, rather than get mandated, you have to use this.
I mean, there are a lot of different models for how to implement MaaS, where you talk about in Sweden, where what they call the Liber model, where public transport open apps, so you could put demand on the MaaS operators to be allowed to resell. You need to fulfill certain standards and making sure that the outcome will be sustainable. But then leave it, so to say, to the market to do the integration and selling to the customers. And then you have the kind of mixed mode. I think more going to be in France, where the cities need to supply some kind of open platform that makes the integration easier. And then you have, like in Berlin, where you actually have the PTA is running the MaaS services. It will be different outcome, and I don't think. Yeah, it's going to be interesting. You can understand what model we believe most in, but that's, the jury is still out there, and it's really trying to transform this industry to make it easier to do the integration. That will take a lot of effort from many different stakeholders, I think.
So you all had a strategy, a planning strategy, I think, for since a few years, few months, and we have an interesting question that says, because the pandemics might happen again, or because we can have other pandemics like this again, do you do a shift in your strategy? Do you plan to address more those kind of problems?
I think we've been quite careful on I guess that viewpoint. You know, if you're going to shift the strategy, you don't want to take a very quick knee-jerk reaction to it. And I guess this still feels fairly new. I'd say we've only in the last little while realized the way we want to go as a company, and the way we want to help and assist. I think there's many different ways you could potentially pivot your company to help during COVID, and that might make your company be a completely different company on the other side of all this. Or you can take the approach that, look, in a little while, it's going to still be like, the reality is the number of people on this planet means that transportation is still going to be a problem on the other side of this. Yes, there's going to be a lot more work from home, but there's still going to be an awful lot of movement needed once we get back to a level of normality. So it's not a problem that's going away. It's probably just one that's not as focused. So you got to kind of take the, what works for you, which one you want to go with. But probably want to just mention that there's levels of disruption that are, terrible and cause problems, but in the long term can actually be good for say an industry. So I'm hoping that is the case for what we're going into, that there's a certain level of acceleration of technology into public transport, for example, into other areas, into integrating into mass services that come about through this because of necessity and I guess a disruption away from operations. When you're in a level of operations, things are just normal. You don't feel and especially people in those organizations don't feel a need to put their neck on a line to change. So I'm fairly hopeful that there'll be a fair bit of change and good change in the long run that will come out of some of this, I guess, terrible crisis that we're experiencing.
I think we would have been better without Corona, to be honest. I mean, this will hurt the shared mobility. I'm especially worried for public transport that is the backbone of our service and that will hurt for a long time. We are in a way in the luckiest position, being, so to say, on top of the value chain. If we are the department store and we see that some goods are easier to sell than another one, yeah, that's okay for us. It's going to be more maybe like cabin services or more car sharing and so on. But I'm worried for public transport. I don't know. What do you think, Chris?
I mean, for us COVID-19 definitely hurts us and along with a lot of other industries. But in terms of the measures that we are employing now, especially for those, say, the high cleaning and sanitizing standard, keeping channel of communication open and clear to passengers and to other service operators. And these measures we're intended to keep and not change it in the foreseeable future, because the way we see it is that it's not only useful in this pandemic situation, is useful in our daily operations, but in terms of other, say, passenger controlling measures that we are using, like the very stringent social distancing requirements, and also keeping the buses below 50% of its maximum passenger capacities. If we find a cure to this COVID-19 virus, then and if everybody is fine, then I guess we will be shelving these passenger controlling the measures. But in terms of other things, we find it very useful to keep them going.
I think just to add to that, I think what I'd like to see, that there's an awful lot of I guess fat in a lot of services right now. It's a bit of a one size fits all for a lot of areas of the world, and I think this is an opportunity to kind of accelerate the movement to improve those efficiencies and improve the sustainable effectiveness of providing a more optimal solution. So there's certain things I think will hopefully come out of it. I think that will benefit us in the long run. But I agree with you, Hans. It's not something that is. We got to win back the trust, I think, for getting people back in public transport for a long time to come. Many solutions will help with that, I think.
And always in this trend, there are some technology questions. So how have 5G or NFC assisted you in the past, and do you have to put more efforts on those technology or on a particular technology to in the future, like just the technology minutes?
I mean, it's interesting if you look at with 5G for local check-in and local information, so on. So that's more on the mobility service provider level. Of course, the connectivity is important. When you look at MOS in itself, I think most of the technology is already there, but it's more of resources and will from the different providers to actually be part of a bigger ecosystem and be easier to integrate and be having interest and put resources into it. So it doesn't really need any, it's not rocket science, but it's willingness to participate in more combined services.
I think some of the nice use cases I've heard that 5G can bring us would be providing, realigning the system to provide priority at traffic lights for those that are buses or shared transport. That's probably one of the most exciting use cases I've heard personally for bringing in 5G and sort of helping, I guess, promote the right type of transportation to improve the city's movement. That's exciting, but we haven't had a whole lot to do with it, still in its early stages.
And I mean, in our service, we are testing the 5G technology in the sense, it's not really something that is very applicable to our passengers, but more for our internal management. So 5G comparing to 4G, it offers a much faster transmission speed with a much wider bandwidth. So what we are using it with is that on all our buses, we have at least 7 video cameras, and on taxis we have, I think, about 3 video cameras, and all these video feeds, they are available live in our control center. So if any incident were to happen, the driver can press an emergency button, which is connected to the local PD, and the police will respond to it, and our fleet management and the company management will respond to that incident with a much faster speed, because they would have available of these footages not only at the control center, but also probably on their phones and on other equipments as well, if 5G is a more made-ready technology in the company.
What I would like to see, I think one big shift would be when voice is really working nice, because using a smartphone isn't really user-friendly. You want to have a travel assistant just calling, give me a taxi, take me home. When's the next bus coming? Could you please reserve a car this weekend? Voice would be really good for MOS. And you can do it. If Google, you can actually order a taxi today in Google Maps if you like to. But really having that travel assistant that say, you're going to be late, should I order a taxi for you? Yes, please, thank you. So AI and voice will, then you could actually start really competing with the private car as well.
And autonomous vehicles as well?
Yeah, yes, yeah, it's good. I mean, everything that increases the accessibility and lowers the cost is good for a service provider.
Okay, guys, we have 12 minutes to go. So maybe you can each say one word or a few words about the biggest challenge you are facing now. It's not have to be link of the pandemic, or if it is, let's go. And after, I will invite you to pick up one question each in the audience. So one of your biggest challenge now, and after a question in the audience.
So should I start?
Yeah.
I guess the biggest challenge for us now as a public transportation operator is, I think something that we've discussed, is that winning the customers back. Because as a public transportation operator, we only cover the bus and taxi side of things, and in most metro cities, we have the metro system running. So as a mass transit option I think even personally, on a personal level, the metro system is more reliable than anything that's running on the road, the bus, the taxi, or even private cars, because they're underground, they would never get congested. So now we are shifting our strategy to not really compete against the metro system, but as opposed to we are running feeder routes to metro stops, from metro stops to residential area, to commercial areas, and etc. And now with the COVID-19 situation, winning customers back becomes more important than ever, because even now people are choosing private cars more often than public transportation, or even any share mobility options that is available. So I guess this would be the most challenging question for us to tackle in the very near future. Would say probably 6 months or even a year.
Interesting. Kevin?
I think all of us in the shared mobility have to look at, winning back the trust of passengers again. I think with what we provide for a transport system, it's quite heartening. There's an element of adoption, acceleration and adoption for what we do, which is good. Within a corporate setting, there's actually, because of the distrust for public transport, again, there's a viewpoint of looking at how they can have a trusted transport network for their corporate system, like a smaller system that they view. So again, look, it's just, I guess, something we're seeing. I would say, in the long run, my view is that, there was a large group of CEOs that got interviewed from the largest companies around the world in January, and they put COVID and they put sustainability at the top of their lists, climate change at the top of the list of things they have to target. I would say we've got to keep that at our core, the sustainability, and how we can look to leverage some of the good things that have come out of this. The fact that everyone's working from home and not traveling is this clean air around. You can see places from space that we've never been able to see for a number of years. How can we take some of the good things like that and actually make it a long-lasting benefit and adoption for corporates, for public transport? How can we make that last, I think, is something we're really looking at.
Great words.
Yeah, I would say, I mean, it's a challenge to recruit customers because this MOS is very new. We go to conferences and speak to the same people all the time. I think this is big. The man in the street haven't heard about it yet. And also, of course, there are some technical challenges. That's also one question of many of the things that we're integrating. I mean, let's say rental car, they're using, I think, IBM mainframes from the 60s for some of the systems. So yeah, there are some problems. But I think really for us, it's more on the ecosystem, trying to convince transport service providers who want to be part of something bigger, have them to be bold enough to start sharing customer and really start targeting car ownership, because that's the blue ocean where we can find most customer and also revenues. And a special case is public transport and public transport authorities, because public transport is typically a subsidized, politically controlled monopoly. So we need, in every city where we want to work with local partners to set up a MOS service, we need to have that good cooperation with public transport authorities, even if they want to offer their own service or have an open platform, but also allowing commercial operators to bundle public transport into the offer. Because if we can't do that, we will never have a cost-effective service. So that's the biggest challenge. But of course, both for public transport and for commercial mobility service provider, we must show that we bring value to them as well. So it's kind of being a small and proving to an old-fashioned industry that we can create value for them, trying to transform the industry. That's a tough challenge.
Exactly. Guys, do you see where are the question, answering questions. And if you each want to pick up one question, the one question of your choice in the audience. The audience has been quite active, so I see there are several questions for Hans.
Yeah,
you answer some of them.
I can pick one because it's one I think is really interesting. It was about how much you can reuse, how much is the same in different cities, and that's a tough one. I think it's really for finding, okay, everything is going to be local. The conditions is local, how public transport is organized, how the city is planned, and what mobility options, the policy of the city and so on is very different. But some of the mistakes and so on, all wheels doesn't need to be reinvented. So finding that it could be technical parts, it could be knowledge based and so on. So I think in the end, the customer user wants quite similar service, but the conditions for setting that up will be very different. So I think it's not like Uber or Google where you can set up subsidiaries or Netflix having the same global service. You really need to work locally. And then in the end, it might be 80% that could be reused. But if you're trying to just copy and paste a solution to another city, it will probably fail. It's going to cost a lot of money. So in the end, but you really need to look at new, fresh eyes from the beginning and work with good local partners that really understand the local market to be successful.
Great. Chris, Kevin, you pick up one question.
Kevin, you want to go first?
I'll give you a bit more time, Chris.
All right.
Yeah, there was a question. I actually can't find it, but it was more around I think it might have been off the main Q&A, but it was around how do you incorporate the disability requirements into your solution and into mass services. I can't remember who posted that. Apologies.
Yeah,
so look, we work in providing technology services for community transport / the paratransit industry as well. It's quite a specialized industry typically for people who are sick, elderly, disabled, and that's the qualification. The problem we find with that, though, is even if you provide technology, convenience, that they have a real, it's because you've got two-tiered systems. You've got a public transport system for everyone knows about, and you've got this subset of a system that not a lot of people know about, and so the marketing of this other system doesn't really get out there and get into people's minds. So there's a lot of people who could leverage these I guess transport methods that are very convenient these days and very good services, but they don't know about them and things like that. So with our technology, we kind of bring that into a public transport setting as well. So you're kind of unifying this sub-service for a small part of society, but some of the most, I guess, needed parts of society for transportation and inclusion into society. So yeah, look, we do it in a number of ways. We kind of provide a holistic view to incorporate the services together, but also doing it to go, okay, well, some people potentially with a disability don't want to get a different service. They want to use the same service and just have it at a standard that it's able for them to be used. So we've got a number of features, but we use technology to kind of bridge that gap between what is I guess in the past has been a fairly, or it's the 80-20 rule. It's exclusive for 80% of the population, 20%. So I think it's a big part of what we need to use technology for, is to look at the equitable way we provide transport. Good question.
I got a question from an anonymous attendee asking, in many countries, public transport fares are highly subsidized by government, and government may not allow the fares to be bundled and monetized by the commercial players. what's our views on this, and is this a big obstacle to mass concept and implementation and adoption? Yes, the public transportation fares is heavily regulated in a lot of the cities. And take Shenzhen as an example. I grew up in a city, so I still remember when I was going to school taking a bus, it cost me 2 RMB or 2.5 RMB for a air-conditioned bus. And a air-conditioned bus fare now, today, is still 2.5. So I guess without a heavily subsidized public transportation service, it would no longer be very available to the general public because it would be expensive to go around. But as a mass service, it's a service that passenger can choose to purchase from a service provider. So I have mentioned earlier that the mass solutions that we are providing to our passenger now, they lie between the price range of a bus and of a taxi. And the easiness to use of these services are also in between. Is not as convenient as a taxi, where you can do ride hailing or street hailing, and it would drop you off from your origin and destination.
Hey, Chris, we lost connection.
If you don't mind, might jump in until Chris comes back, just to keep things going. Just on that same question, hopefully Chris comes back and I'll pass the buck. But what I'm kind of interested to see, so within the bus industry, there's a lot of bus companies that would have incorporated what we call a fare box risk. So the amount of fares that they would expect to get from passengers, they'd get a percentage of that. And they'd incorporate that in their modeling for the financial feasibility of their bid, which is 8 to 10 years long contract. So they have to be fairly comfortable with that risk. Obviously, with what's happened now, those contracts that are out in the world that don't have a fare box risk, there's no reason not to stop them. They're running with 1-2 people in them. That's fine. It's giving a service to people, but it's again, it's not optimized. But I think in the future, there's going to be an awful lot of bus companies that will not look at fare box risk in the same way and will not incorporate fare box risk in the same way. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out in the bids, and do the smaller providers or different providers who are happy to take that level of risk on, do they come in with lower level of bids, and we start to see, I guess, a spread or a change in the spread of within the industry. I think that's going to be interesting, personally, for me to see. I think subsidies are just something you've got to have in public transport. It's the only way it works. Chris, I jumped in. I'll hand back to you in a sec, if that's okay. Just one more point. The other thing, I think that the reason they bring in the fare box risk is to try and provide a level of SLAs, and try and promote more patronage, and the more patronage is tied to financial reward. I think that's going to potentially be replaced by more data analytics, less around, I guess, passengers and getting passengers on a vehicle, more around, I guess, different analytics that are able to be measured with what we have available from the technology these days. That's what I'm foreseeing. Sorry, Chris, over to you, mate. Lost Chris again.
Even with a very heavily subsidized public transportation system, our government they're still very welcome for mass provider to enter the market, because it do provide passengers with more diverse services where they can choose from, instead of if they don't own a private car, they were forced to use a public transportation system. And or forced to use the taxi service. So with this diversity in the mobility options, I guess is really doing a lot of good for citizens, where they can go around more easily, even though the overall capacity of the vehicles are the same, but they can use it more easily. So definitely the price barrier would pose a challenge for the mass provider, because the price would be limited because they want to compete in the market. But as in the very beginning of this of the promotion of mass services, I think the government was more than welcome for competitors to join the market and see how it all goes. And as far as Shenzhen goes, I think the market is growing very robust.
Guys, I think we ran out of time. I think we, in all parts of the world, because Hans come from Sweden, I come from France, Chris from China, and Kevin from Australia, we all have the same issue to try to make cooperation between mass transport and make mobility as a service arise. So it's cool to share best practice and to have those kind of webinars to discuss from all around the world how you can experience. So it was really cool to have you. The public was really reactive today. So
yeah,
I enjoyed the exchange.
Yeah, thanks, Aymeric. Thanks, everyone.
Okay, all right. Thank you so much, guys. I hope everyone have learned a thing or two from our panelists today. So we love to hear your comment, your feedback about this session, and you can leave your feedback via the QR code being broadcasted on your screen at the moment, or we will send you an email for a survey tomorrow. So next week, we will kind of steer away from land transportation for a bit, and we will be discussing on, we will be exploring urban air mobility with our panelists from Skyports, Ascend, and Lilium. You can go to our website for more information and to sign up. And for the week after, the topic is quite similar to what we are discussing today, but address more in detail about how transportation industry is responding to the COVID-19 pandemic during and post this crisis. So yeah, again, thank you so much for joining us today, and looking forward to seeing all of you in the next ones. Till then, stay safe and be healthy. Thanks, guys.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Stay safe.